Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, host of the Leaders Without podcast. Today, I have a phenomenal guest for you, my new good friend, Randy Brown. He's an amazing gentleman. We connected once again through the wonderful serving circle. About 2 weeks ago, we had a wonderful chat last week. I mean, I can talk to Randy for hours and hours, and we're supposed to talk last week just for about 30 minutes, just meet and greet, and we ended up talking for almost 2 hours because we share so much in common. You know, Randy has been a professional basketball coach at the highest level, and if I were to tell you some of the guys he saw as his so-called students, whatnot, it's basically the who and who's of the NBA, like multiple winners and all that. But we're gonna talk about in a moment. But what I really like about Andy is, despite all of that, he has a beautiful heart, really heart centered, and he's we're just before going live, we talked about, you know, that sports is a beautiful metaphor for life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and it's during your losses that you gain your biggest lesson, and you grow up the most. And we're gonna talk about all of that in a moment. So, Randy, my friend, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Payman. Thank you. You have an outstanding podcast, and I know so many people have either appeared on it as a guest, and so many more that listen. And it's a valuable resource without a doubt. I'm a fan, and having met you last week and the conversation we had, I definitely got a new friend, and we do have a lot in common. I've been really looking forward to coming on with you.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine. Really appreciate the kind words. So, Randy, as I told you last week, the kind of conversation I like to have is, sure, we're going to talk about your business, your achievement, but what this podcast is about is what I like to do is I like to have a look under the hood to see what's in your heart, to have a heart to heart conversation, because it doesn't matter what type of business you're in. We all in the same business. We are in a business, people business. For example, when you're looking for a professional, sure, they all, qualified and have the credentials, but the person you're going to hire, you do business with, is a person you can connect the most as a human being. So what
Mhm.
we're going to, the focus of this podcast is to see who's Randy as a person, as a human being, first and foremost. So
Mhm.
are you ready, Randy?
Oh, I am ready. The referee's got the ball. He's about ready to
All
throw it
right,
up.
let's go. All right. So, first of all, Randy, tell us, for people who don't know you, who's Randy as a person and as a human being?
As a person and a human being, I initially recognized myself as a child of God.
Mm.
Very important to me that my childhood growing up in the church, my mom being the church secretary.
Oh, wow.
I'm just so, it's amazing when I look back, and we can all look back and see that there were signs in our childhood that a lot of those influenced us to become what we are today. And that I can't believe that I could be where I'm at in in this time in my life without that foundation. I think anything we do, we need that foundation, but we need one for life for sure. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe that part of what I'm about is sharing what I've been through with other people. And I have this it's almost like a scary thought that if I were to leave this earth and not share what I know to be true, and not share my story and my experiences, good and bad, I think I'm robbing a lot of people of a gift. And I look at it as a gift. And people will say, no, wait a minute, wait a minute. You resigned from your high level coaching position in shame. You were incarcerated. You lost what people would consider everything. How is that a gift? How can you? Well, you know what? The gift comes as a result of those things being part of my life. You
Lessons.
know,
Yes.
I think a great analogy I heard one time is if you went and played golf, right, and you tee off on the first hole and you get a hole in one, well, there's no celebration because you're going to go to the next hole and hit a hole in one too, and you're going to score 18 for your round. Now, what are you really motivated to go play golf the next day? I wouldn't be. If life was that great and
That's
that
easy. Yeah,
marvelous every single day and our lives went perfect, oh my gosh, would that be boring? I
absolutely.
really believe that. And so I believe that I have been part of my DNA is to share with others to help enhance their life, and it either help them through things they're currently going through or be a future caution sign for things that, and I like to alert especially men of things that are going on in their life that may become huge obstacles to them later on. And so I think that's part of my DNA. And I think I was also created for community and for friendship. My life is so unbelievably intertwined into the lives of so many others. I mean, I have multiple friends, 6, 7, 8 friends that I grew up with in grade school and junior high, and we've stayed together as a band of brothers. And of course, now we're facing adversity in our own lives, and we're losing parents, and I haven't lost anybody in the gang yet, but we're getting to that point someday. And those guys have been there for me 24/7. The unconditional, you can call at any time for any reason, is a truth. And I've taken guys up on it, and they've taken me up on it. I just think that is just an unbelievable part of my life and a big part of who I am.
Wow, love that. We're gonna unpack that. And the one thing you said that really is powerful among many things is that, you know, we are here to share our gifts. And for me, just to backtrack a little bit, I was never religious, but I always believed in God. And since I had
Mhm.
my spiritual awakening to the start of pandemic, so prior to that, whenever something happened to me that was negative, I would always be, you know, being playing the victim. Why, what did I do to deserve this? Why me? Why me? Why me? But then since the pandemic and all that, and my spiritual awakening, I learned to really harness the tremendous power of asking questions and asking the right question. So instead of
Right.
asking why me, why did I do to deserve this, I asked, what is this trying to teach me? What is a lesson for me
Yeah.
to learn from it?
Yes.
And I've been to the lowest of the lows and the highest of the highs. And again, I would not change anything because some of those lows were absolutely phenomenal. That's when I grew up the most as a human being, and I had, ironically, the most fun in my life and my toughest times that I was going through. Because I see this life as a school for us to learn lessons, but more than that, on a layman's term, I see it more like a buffet. We're here to try and sample as many different dishes as possible. And that's why I've done it all. I've done corporate, I've done the laptop lifestyle, I've done the blue collar with rednecks and the oil field of -40. I've been a professional coach in China as a football coach, and now podcaster. So for me, it's all this life, this journey is about trying new things, experimenting as many things. That's why we are here. We are eternal beings having a temporary experience, physical experience, so we can understand, we can try all these different things that the 3D realm allow us to experiment. So that's the understanding I've come to realize over the past couple of years. And when you mentioned about the lessons, you mentioned quitting your high profile job and being incarcerated and all that. Some people can look at that as a shame and as a failure, but I'll look at that as, hey, that's what is a lesson in here for me to learn from that. We're gonna cover that in a moment, but wow, that's powerful. Thank you for sharing that, my friend.
Yeah. I have a comment backing up your comment about why me. And
Mhm.
I have shifted from why me to why not me.
Love that. Yes, yes.
Right. And so
I would write this down because that's
I'm
beautiful.
opening
Okay.
myself up to future opportunities to assist people, through my story.
And
Not
also,
because of I'm a know-it-all or I have all these experiences. Well, I do, but if you can talk from your heart about what you've truly been through personally, what a powerful story.
that's where the magic happens. That's when you can really connect and relate and speak to people as heart to heart level.
Exactly. Exactly.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. Love that. So I love the way this has started. So let me first now ask you a series of rapid fire questions to get to further know you as a person. So tell us, Randy, what makes you happy as a person?
What really makes me happy is when I'm in um, any situation with another people or persons that are also happy. I just like to see people enjoy life, whether it's a joke or whether we just are having a good time together. I mean, that really thrills me. Um, you know, children inherently make me just so joyful because they have no filter. They're
Yes.
loving life. They're adorable. They they just um, and it's because my wife and I had four girls and a history with my four girls, and so when I see another child, I think of my kids and the unbelievable um, opportunities they have before them, and they just, I mean, you can't phase them. I mean, they wake up and they want to play and they're happy. I mean, come on, you
Yes,
can't beat
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow.
And the other thing you know, not alluding to hobbies and different things, but the one thing that I really that really makes me happy is when something is heartfelt. When I see something or someone or some event um, that touches my heart, doesn't matter what it is. I think that's really special and makes me happy. In the inner me, it makes me really, really happy to know that other people are doing the right thing. Other people are helping someone. You know, when I see someone help another person, maybe an elderly person get the groceries in the trunk. It happened the other day, and I'm like, that's
Wow.
awesome. That's awesome that that
Good.
guy
Yeah.
decided to stop and take some time to help someone. You know, those types of things because they touch a heart and they just come through as happiness, no question.
Love that. It's a beautiful example. Absolutely. Now tell us, what makes you smile?
Mm, boy, music.
Yes.
I can hear a song. I can hear the first guitar lick of a song and get, rip into a huge smile. I'm obviously a big music guy and follow it and spend a lot of time with it. It's really a passion. Um, I have an interesting there's an interesting little off story on that too. During my bottoms, during my toughest times in my life, the two things that were always present. Obviously, God's always present in my life, but music. And there are times where I really avoided my family. I avoided my profession. I avoided just about everything. And the only thing that brought me solace was actually two things: music, because it's just I can change my mood in a second, and it can really help center me. Uh, and then things like alcohol and my incarceration based on the fact that I was involved in pornography. Those things became friends. And if we're going to make hold up a caution sign, it would be if your friends, so-called friends, are of the unhealthy sort, they're not friends. All right, they're really evil with a friend's maybe a friend's face, but so music is healthy. The others weren't, and obviously they didn't serve me well at all. So um,
That
yeah,
way they served you
music
and
makes them
teaching you
smile.
invaluable lessons, I guess, no?
Oh yeah,
In that
yeah,
way, indirectly.
yeah, no question.
Hmm.
Um, I'll tell you what else makes me smile is anything that connects me to my childhood.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I mean, I just talked about kids don't have a filter and they wake up every day just ready to rambunctiously run all over the place and have fun. Well, that was me at one time, and to associate with that little piece of me, that makes me smile big time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we all have that inner child in us that we always looking, striving to bring back, even no matter how old we get, because
Right.
deep down we all looking to have fun, because we're all still, even if you're 95, you're still a child at heart, for me, the moment you lose that inner child, that's the moment you start dying, in my opinion, because that inner child is that
Now,
inner fire inside of you that gets you going, that gives you joy, passion, and everything else, and fuels everything else in your life. At least from
yeah.
my perspective.
One of the things I know I am guilty of is, especially during my coaching career, was at times just being too serious, too
Mm,
bent on winning. And man, I needed that inner child so many times as I coached. It's funny, the longer you get away from things, sometimes the more clear they get. And I see the time I put into to winning or losing, as it may be, is phenomenal. And I know we all try to do our best, but probably too serious. I probably put too much of a emphasis on it when in fact it was a game played by young people, coached by older people like myself, and it's not that monumental of a thing. We all have a one-loss record, but there becomes a time where we don't even remember the numbers. It doesn't matter. We remember I remember relationships of my players and memories that I have about building a team, and boy, those are the things. So yeah, that inner child, that boy, there's a lot to that. And we got to keep that guy alive.
Absolutely. You mentioned, the memories, the relationship. I would add also, the transformation you see from people that you work with.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. When you see someone that can barely, for example, in basketball, maybe not barely dribble, but being not confident as much, or being shy, or not having the leadership inside of them, and then within a few months, you see them transform into being an absolute monster of a leader. That's one of the greatest reward and proudest moment that you would feel, not only just as a coach, but that applies to any business. Because what
Sure.
is business? It's all about transformation, impacting the lives of people you deal with. That's what people buy. They don't buy the product, or
Right.
you per se what you have to say. They buy the transformation. You know.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt.
Absolutely. Wow. Beautiful. Now tell us, on the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
One of the things that really gets me is when people don't respect other people.
Mm,
Um, because we are we are really so similar, all of us in this world. And it's always been amazing to me how one person can treat another so differently, and sometimes just so awfully, based on the fact that they dress different.
they look different. They
their
think
their
different.
hair length is different. They look different. And like we were talking about earlier, they represent different things and they have opinions. And when opinions clash, all of a sudden you're a bad person and I'm a good person, and I know it and you don't know it. Just I guess that's one of the major things that would be a downer for me, is that we can't treat each other like humans. And we were we were all born with all kinds of differences, and when they come out, it doesn't mean that someone's better than another person, or you just all the terms we use for people that we think are below us is crazy. That is one of the biggest things that really bothers me. um, any kind of neglect, obviously with children, or I'll tell you that the issue of the homeless is really a tough one for me too. I can't and of course I say that, and and I'm not there to lend a hand. I have in the past, but it's not like it's something I do daily. And I can't imagine the plight of the person like that that's got to deal with that every single day. So people that have caught misfortune and can't bounce back. A lot of what I talk about is catching men at a time when they're vulnerable and there are things in their life that don't make them authentic and whole, and to try to aid them in learning how to bounce back and get to either where they were or even at a higher level. But if you think about this, there's an element of our society that will never bounce back. They don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the advantages. They just are down to rock bottom. And a lot of people stay there their whole life. Now that makes me sad.
Yes.
So
And
that's
and,
just
and
a couple examples.
yeah, no, this is powerful. I also relate with that because, especially the homeless and all that. Being an homeless doesn't mean you're a bum, you're a loser, you're a failure. They just got a bad break, bad divorce, bad business deal. And the scariest thing and most humbling thing is that this could happen to any one of us, anyone, just one bad business decision, one bad audit or bad whatever, and you can end up there. So most of these people, they're good people with with good hearts, just the bad cards to them, and just in a bad moment. So what we can do is just, that's what I keep on telling people on my podcast, and I'm doing it as well whenever I can. Just go talk to them, say hi, how are you, how's your day, because treat them like human being. Don't just treat them like the trees or like the
Yeah,
furniture in the background. They're not in the background, they're people, human beings. And a lot of time these people, they just need a little bit of warmth, a little bit of kindness, so that they can rekindle their belief and humanity again. That's what they need, most of these people, because they all have the knowledge. They're smart people for most of them. They've
right.
just been treated really badly that they completely lost hope. And that's what they need, hope. Go talk to them. If you see the same guy or the same person on the side of the street every day, just spend maybe 30 seconds, a minute. How's your day? Try to get to know them. I'm not about giving them money, but go give them, coffee, a sandwich, whatever they need. And even better, once you get to know them, give them a book. Maybe that's what they can be the Kindle for them too. Hey,
Right.
there is good people out there. Okay, I've been now at the lowest. I've been at the high. I know what I can do. It's up to me to get myself out. And you'd
Yeah.
you'd be, sometimes one of the most powerful lessons I learned in life, and I've seen it so many times on my podcast, is that me and you, we can do small gestures that can even seem insignificant to us, but for the right person at the right time, can be life changing.
Yeah.
Just a kind word, a word of encouragement. And you as a coach, you know that better than anyone, because you've had players that they're good players, but they're just in a bad phase, that they felt bad and all that. Just a word from you, just turn them around. And that
Yeah.
applies to people. And that's what, no, I hear you. It's a sad reality that we can all, as I keep saying, not any single individual can change the world, but if each and every single one of us does a little bit in our own small circle of influence, we can together create a ripple effect, to change. If me and you, for example, this is the whole purpose of my podcast, not just for me to have wonderful conversation with you and other amazing people, but you sharing your story, me and you talking. If we can inspire just one person to do good with their business and go on and help someone else, and that person goes on to help someone else and pays it forward to someone else, this is the whole purpose of this podcast, to
That's
inspire.
the gift, right?
Yeah, exactly. Share knowledges, share experiences, share lessons learned. Like you going through what you went through, me going through what we went through. These are not tragedies. These tragedies are beautiful gifts and lessons and disguise, because they're here for,
Right.
for lessons for us to grow. And we are here. The podcast is one way, one vehicle for us to share those beautiful lessons and gifts with other people.
Absolutely. Uh, it- I'm gonna throw out a term. We might have talked about this before. I think those of us that are in the kind of work that you and I are in, working with people and really trying to help them enhance their lives and get the most out of what they have. I really believe what you just said is, if we can help that one person, and you never know which person it is, you never know how it's actually going to specifically help them, and you don't know when it's going to happen. And I really believe in this idea of invisible impact. And I know that, well, we'll just talk about this podcast, that we I think we're like farmers. Farmers plant seeds, and they're always working the ground. You know, being in Iowa here, I'm surrounded by farms and
Yeah.
farmers. So I love the analogy, but they're always planting seeds. They're always fixing their equipment. They're always getting ready. I mean, that's what they do every day. What we're doing right now is we're planting seeds. People
Absolutely.
might not know it, but we're dropping a seed into their pocket that someday it may or may not, catch the dirt, catch the nutrients, and actually become a living organism and actually bloom into being something, where it's corn stalk or a flower or whatever it is. But we don't know right here, and your next conversation today and your next podcast guest, we don't know from those seeds when, in fact, those things come to fruition. But I believe, because of experiences, that people who hear you take that with you. And later on, they'll forget where they heard it. They'll forget who they heard it from,
Yep.
but they will remember that, oh, I heard once that, whatever it may be. And that's an invisible impact that we have. And I think every person in this world has an invisible impact if they choose to, in fact, use it. And it's a powerful concept to me, because
Absolutely.
it legitimizes all of our work and should really motivate us to spread, the information and gifts and the things we've talked about to other people every single day. It might, I mean, if it's a youngster, it might not be for 60 years when you and I aren't here, and they're 70 years old and they learned some lesson when they were 10. I mean, just think about that. I mean, and things come up a lot. I'll tell you a quick idea about this. I've coached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of basketball players. And one of the greatest joys of coaching is to connect with them down the road. Let's say they're all of a sudden, I'll say, hey, how old are you now? Well, I'm 42. You can't be 42. I see them in that uniform. I still, because my relationship with them was when they were 19 years old. So
Yeah.
it can't be that old. And they'll say, Coach, I just want to tell you one thing. You said something one time, and you probably forget that you even said it. We had just lost a game, and you had talked about how this is going to turn into the same type of situation in your life, your personal life, you and your wife, you and your family down the road. And he goes, it happened. And he goes, and I went back to what you said that time in the locker room about how to handle a situation like that. Now, when he was 19 and I said that, I wasn't thinking, I'm going to tell these guys this because when they're 44, they're going to be able to use it. I was talking in the moment, but they're in the moment, there are always lessons that carry on, that their life, like dandelion seeds that just fly through the sky and land wherever. And you don't know if they're going to rot or whether they're going to end up creating another dandelion. But when you hear it from one of your players and it's affected their life, then the wins and the losses dissipate to me. And that becomes the reason why you coach or teach or are a fireman or are a counselor or whatever. We could go on and on and on, right? Invisible impact, I think, is something everybody needs to think about. And it can be everybody. It doesn't have to be leaders or people in certain positions. I think that's one of our responsibilities on this earth,
Sure.
to
Absolutely. I love that.
think like that.
I love that because just like I said, and you mentioned as well, the greatest reward is the transformation, that you see
Yeah.
in people, transformation. And we all have knowledge, experience, wisdom to share, regardless of age. Even if you're 10, you might know something that you can say to someone that can at least, plant the seed, and then over time they can germinate the idea into something
Yes.
bigger, and absolutely. Wow. No, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I totally agree with you on that. Now, tell us, You're a super talented human being. What would you say is your number one personal superpower?
My ability to translate experience into story into a
Mm,
lesson,
love that.
which is kind of what we just talked about. But
Hmm.
uh, I really, I'm not a textbook guy. I don't speak in textbookese, if that's
Yeah,
a, maybe that's a new word. I don't. I
me
think
neither.
when you put colors to a coloring book, you have a beautiful picture. I don't care how sloppy it is and outside the lines.
It comes to
It's that
life.
color. That's what stories do. And
Yeah,
stories make them human and personal.
totally.
And when you go face to face with another man who you know that is struggling and you don't even know exactly what they're struggling from, but and I've done this so many countless times where I sit down with someone and I just feel like something is amiss in their life. And I kind of open it up and soften it a little bit and tell my story first. And it is unbelievable, the outpouring, because I've given them a license to be transparent, because I was just transparent and open the floodgates. And I mean, sometimes it has been like crazy, open the floodgates, and their emotions in the past, you can just see rolling out. Unreal. So I couldn't do that without a story.
Oh,
If I'm talking just basic black and white textbook, you can't do that. You got to put color to it. And so for me, that's just a gift that I've been given. I've been able to, I think the ability to take something that's happened, put some color to it and some substance to it, and then make it personal for the person I'm talking to.
absolutely. And also because people relate with stories because stories is something that they've been through themselves. They understand that very good because what is life? Life is a succession, is a collection of stories, experiences that we go through to learn lessons. And if you go back even further, how were lessons taught? At the time, maybe there were no schools. Through stories, the elders gather around the fire, whatever, and just taught stories to the
Yes.
youngsters, to everybody else. This is how
Yes.
we as human beings have been doing this since the first, people on this planet. So stories are everything. And just in marketing, there's a saying that says, facts tell, stories sell. People
Yes.
buy because it can connect as a story. Every
Yes.
person, every client, every customer, every product, every launch, what is that? It's a story. It's a person. It's a
Yes.
story worth sharing. So
Yes.
stories, I agree. Stories are everything because that's one of the core fundamentals of what makes us what we are as a human being. We're all about the stories.
Absolutely. I want to tell you a quick one right now, as a matter of
Sure,
fact,
please.
to make this point. I had the unbelievable opportunity to meet one of the Apollo 13 astronauts,
Whoa. Which one?
Fred Haas.
Wow.
And I talked to him for 5 minutes at an event that I was at. And you could take, because I watched the movie and I've read about it and I remember when it happened and all that, but I knew nothing about what happened until I spent 5 minutes with the guy who almost lost his life 200,000 miles from the moon when they had the problem in the module. And I didn't ask any questions. He kind of went ahead and talked, and the detail he gave me in 5 minutes about what he went through, what was wrong, and the pressure behind them having to make these tiny little repairs. And really, if they touch the wrong wire, they do the wrong thing by a very small margin, it's over, right? They lose their life. And just talked about the pressure and just the whole, it was crazy. The detail in 5 minutes he spent with me. And I'm like, isn't that nuts? I mean, we read a book and think we know about how something happened and how it really felt and everything. And I'm like, I mean, if we can talk to people about their experiences, it puts a completely different color on everything. And those were some of my favorite 5 minutes of my life, is spending time with
Absolutely.
him.
Absolutely. I can imagine. Wow. That must have been a highlight. Absolutely. Wow. Listen, Randy, we've barely scratched the surface, and I think this is going to be a good one. We might have to do a part two, if not part three, because there's so much we can cover, so much we can talk. Hey, heck, we might as well just go ahead and do a podcast, just me and you talking, because so many experiences, seriously, about your life, my life, the lessons. Wow, I love that. But let's move forward a little bit. So now, you like traveling, right?
I love it.
All right. So tell us, what was the very first trip that you took and that you remember?
Hmm. It was probably a trip to Minnesota, just north of us, with my family
Mhm.
on a family vacation. Yeah, I was very fortunate. My father was a sports writer and an outdoor writer,
Okay.
and so we spent a lot of our time in the summers at resorts, on fishing trips.
Mm,
And so I would say probably that trip in
mhm.
particular, because I can still remember things about that trip.
Awesome. Now,
So
let me take you on a different type of travel down memory line. Go back to when you're a young boy growing up. When we're kids, people around us, parents, family, teachers, relative ask us, Randy, when you grow up, what do you want to become? What was your answer as a young boy?
my answer was to be a fireman.
Really?
For
Okay.
Christmas, we got this kind of a it was a it was a it in cloth. It was a cloth firehouse that you would put over like a card table, and
Mm,
then the sides would come down, so it had four sides. You could crawl inside and be away from everybody and kind of hide. And I just thought that was a coolest little thing. And we visited the fire station and all that when I was a kid. So that didn't last long, but that's the first one that I remember.
mm. Now, what was your relationship with school? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it growing up?
Love school.
Okay.
Love school. Really enjoyed it.
What was your favorite subject?
My favorite subject was probably social studies.
Okay.
And I later taught social studies and
Wow.
mathematics as a high school
Wow.
teacher. And so my second probably favorite was math, the one that everybody seems to hate.
Like me.
I always liked math. I'm a numbers guy. I'm
Wow.
a numbers
Awesome.
guy, and ironically, I ended up teaching those subjects in high school.
Awesome. And what would you say was the one subject you could not stand at all?
Hmm. English, although I come from a award-winning journalism family with my father and brother, probably English because of all the rules.
Mm,
I'm pretty black and white with stuff, and all the rules in English are,
sure.
well, but if it comes after e, it's this, and I'm like, come on. And how
Yeah.
I'll never forget when I learned that two words, okay, could be spelled differently, but mean different things, but they
Mhm.
sounded the same.
Yes,
That one
yes.
really threw me for a loop. So all the different rules and stuff really messed me up. But
Yeah,
I like to write now, so
sure.
I must have liked something in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. What was your very first job?
My very first job was to shag softballs. So there was a softball tournament every summer in our town, and my dad knew the fellow who ran the tournament, and we got paid to position ourselves behind the backstop so that if there was a foul ball, they just didn't let the ball go and fans could grab it. We would chase that ball and then bring it back to the umpire, and then he would get it back in play. That's the first one I can remember that I got paid for. I mowed a lot of lawns and trimmed a lot of hedges too as I grew up, which I loved. Which I loved.
I think that first job was, at least from the sound, it looked pretty fun.
Yeah, it was.
You just basically
Absolutely.
getting paid to watch what? Softball? Yeah.
Right. It's like being 45 years old and being paid a lot of money to coach basketball later in my life.
We're gonna talk about basketball in a moment, but now let's move forward. Let's talk about your path from the moment you left school, college to now. How would you describe your path? Would you say it was pretty much straightforward? smooth sailing. Once you went into one line, it was pretty much fast forward. Smooth sailing was like turns and twists, like roller coaster.
I didn't have a lot of turns and twists because from the age of 8 through an experience I had in a gymnasium watching a coach who I really respected and liked, and he was a family friend, and I saw him out there coaching those players. I fell in love with that game, and I fell in love with the fact that somebody's got to coach that team.
Mm,
And really, from a young age, I knew what I wanted to do.
mm.
I really did. And so I went to school with that in mind. I went to college with that in mind. I was going to be a high school teacher and coach. But the real goal was to become a college basketball coach. But I pretty much was on that line the entire time. And as I left college, I became a high school coach and teacher. 3 years after that, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the University of Arizona as a basketball assistant coach, as a graduate assistant. So, and that continued for the next 20 years. So we're talking about a lot of years. I was pretty much on that same line.
Let's
Yeah.
backtrack a little bit. So, growing up, were you a big fan of playing basketball? Did you at any time consider becoming a basketball player yourself before transitioning into coaching? Tell us about
Well,
that phase.
well, Pistol Pete Maravich was my guy,
Mm,
and he'll always be my guy. He was
okay.
my idol, and so I wanted to be like the Pistol, and I think like a lot of kids when they're in elementary and junior, they want to they're go they want to be at the best highest level, and of
Sure.
course I wanted to be in the NBA. I wanted to be a college player, and I wanted to be in the NBA. So that's a dream that we all have. No, I fell in love with the game, absolutely loved it, and played all the other sports like many of us did, but then gravitated towards this one in particular, and it was over. Tremendous love for the game and everything it represents, and when we start to lose our alignment with the game, I think we need to I think we need to take care of, and I know your love is soccer, and I'm sure you get a little ticked off when the respect for that game, that long-standing game, is compromised. It really hurts me. And a lot of things that are going on right now in the game of basketball hurt me. I think we're compromising the reputation of that unbelievable game that was invented many, many years ago in Springfield, Mass, in a gymnasium where it snowed that day, and they had to figure out what an indoor activity was. See, I
Yeah,
go
like,
way back to that. I'm so tied to things like that. I'm really into the history of things and history of the game, and so I just 100% into that game as
so
a player and a coach. And I was fortunate, Payman, because I was able to play in high school at for our varsity, and then was really lucky to play junior college basketball for 2 years after high school. Extended my career for 2 years, which was awesome. I
what
just didn't want to
position?
stop playing.
What position were you playing?
I was a point guard.
Point guard. Okay.
Yeah.
So, at what point did you realize that your dream of becoming a professional player might not pan out?
Oh, about the time I was in seventh or eighth grade, you kind of start getting wise to things.
Was it because of your
But
height? Were you a big guy or a short guy? What's your height?
well, I'm 6'2", and I was
Okay.
6'2" in high school.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty good.
thin
Yeah.
as a rail, but I had because all the time I spent uh by myself, indoors and outdoors, playing that game and dribbling that basketball. And Pistol Pete's the great magician in the game of basketball through the history of the game, just tremendous. And he was my idol, and I got very proficient at handling the ball, and that was kind of and being able to pass and make assists and things. So that was my biggest value to the game, and I just love that. And being a point guard was fun because you're kind of in charge of some things. So
Sure.
yeah.
Just like what's the name in American football? Like a quarterback, the guy
Hmm.
planning and strategizing and making
Yeah.
things happen. Yeah,
Yeah. Loved it.
absolutely. Wow. Now, so when you realize that becoming a professional player wasn't in the cards for you, What made you go into coaching?
because I was still able to stay involved in the game.
Mm.
To me, it was a natural.
How
It
did you
really
learn it? Did
was.
you take actual classes, or did you just learn on the job, so to speak?
I think I was a student of the game since I was 8. That very important day for me that I remember distinctly.
Mm.
And I think when you love something, you learn by osmosis. You don't even try to learn. You can just pick things up by being around the game, being around people who know the game, know a lot more than you. So I think I was a student from that point on, and it was just such a natural fit. It was. I remember almost jokingly, like, "You're kidding me? That they pay people to coach basketball?" I just didn't. I mean, that day was phenomenal because I'm like, I'm doing that. I don't want to, the idea of going to work was foreign to me my whole life. And I feel extremely grateful for that. But yeah, I had a ball every day. I get to go to
Was
the
it
gym.
was it was it hard for you to really gain the trust and of the players that you were given, initially speaking, when you first started your career, or was it pretty much a good fit from the start?
There's such an art to,
Mhm.
all coaching is in teaching is interpersonal relationships. It's managing people. And the great saying that players or students don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yes.
And it's a great principle, because how do you gain the trust of, okay, think about this, a high school coach. So they see you first as your teacher. You're in there teaching them in the classroom, giving them assignments, and if they're talking, you gotta reprimand them and all that. Then you go to the gym, and it's their teacher now is their coach in the gym, and you shift roles. And I always thought that was interesting, and never really put a lot of credence into that when I was a young coach. I just figured this is basketball, and we're going to be serious, and we're going to get after it. And, young kids don't think about it like adults do. So I think there was a big learning curve for me, just in terms of people management. I was into the game and the X's and O's and knew all about how to do this and that. But that's not the deal, I found out later. It's being able to relate to all players of all backgrounds, of all races, of all social status, and to be able to teach them a team game, which means we all got to play together for a common goal, and give them a role. There's just so much to it. And I had to learn that. And I think I was very rigid. I was very rule oriented with my coaching when I started. So I just had to learn that. You learn that through experience, and you learn that through having mentors and leaning on people who have been successful ahead of you. And then it's a process. It takes time. But it really did take me time.
Was your coaching style different than your teaching? So you mentioned you were rigid and following the rules and coaching, but when you were a teacher in the classroom, we all also the same, or would you say that because you were a coach, the students tended to like you more because of being a coach, more like the cool factor? You're not just another boring teacher, but also the
Right.
teacher that you can have fun with on the playground, play ball. So did you see that as a positive impact also towards your students as a teacher?
I was pretty rigid and stringent when I was a teacher too, but
Mm.
I enjoyed the classroom just because you could really get down to a personal level with your students. And I taught in high school, so I had
Oh
freshmen
yeah.
through seniors, and so I tried to turn American history into something that, well, again, stories.
Yes, I was about just to say that. Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Now I've got a textbook, and I've got to follow and make lesson plans and classroom objectives and things like that. But I always tried to put a spin to it where I could get them to smile and laugh and say, okay, let's say you're Rockefeller, and you're the richest person in the world. all right, because of all this new, industrial revolution. Okay. What would you do on a weekend?
Good
I mean, just
question.
something obscure like that, just to get them thinking, what? Well, how'd you, just something from left field. I always tried to keep it light. Um,
Yeah.
one thing that always bothered me, Payman, about teaching is that it is grading students. Now, I know we have to do it. I know that's part of evaluating them, but I've had so many, and it seemed like there were a lot more in mathematics than there were in social studies, that would come to me and say, can I come into after school, and will you help me with this assignment, because I'm totally lost, I don't know how to do this. And they come in and we spend time and they make progress, and they come in the next week and they make progress, and we go take that test and they fail miserably. Now, there's been great improvement, but it's still not even a passing grade. It pained me beyond belief to have to put the grade on that paper. And I remember telling my principal one day, hey, can we invent a sliding scale that a student's heart, or a student's
Tensions and hard
desire
work.
to
Yeah.
get better. Okay, can we factor that in to where we can do this for the grade? I mean, it didn't, some
That
kids
would be
waltzed in
beautiful.
there who hadn't paid attention for 2 weeks, taken the test, missed one, you know, and great for them. That's a great thing for them. But this poor kid who, and that grading thing for kids is a really sensitive thing. I remember
Mhm.
getting
Oh
those
yeah.
grades back, and I'm like, oh, I hope it's a B or higher. I just never forget that. And I used to get nervous for testing,
Sure.
and it pained me beyond belief to have to put these grades on there. And I wanted a sliding scale so we could really help those kids that really tried, because I'm about potential. And I think I thought there should be a number. If you could put a number on the percentage of potential, and how close they got to that. So this student I'm talking about, in my mind, got a C. They didn't fail, they got a C. Now, I know that's kind of crazy, but that's how I felt. Now, if you think about a lot, in a lot of other ventures, we gauge performance based on potential, how far they rise, either to or away their potential, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to do, improve people and get them, but it doesn't exist in public school. And I was really disappointed by that and felt so bad for kids. But I always wondered what came of them in their life, and always hoped that little effort and that little desire to figure it out and get it right would translate into their life in some way, shape, or form.
That's the
That was
biggest
always
lesson.
my
Yes.
external hope, and desire for them to learn that,
Mhm.
and have it pay off for them finally.
And also, one of the greatest thing it can do, it can happen to you, is say 5, 10 years down the road, you just bump into one of your students and say, "Hey, coach, thank you. That advice you gave me. Thank you because of that discipline you instilled into me. Thank you because sports allowed me to learn a valuable lesson." I'm sure that must have happened to you on a regular basis, right?
It's happened a lot, and it's
Mhm.
it's it's unbelievable. Um, things like, you remember how I struggled math, right? Oh yeah, yeah. I'm now a teller at a bank. I'm like,
Wow.
whoa, great. Things like that, and
Yeah.
that actually happened once. Things like that are those are
Wow.
life things. Those
It
are
really
awesome.
touched you. Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your coaching. So when you started coaching at the start of your career, what would you say was the part that you were struggling the most as far as the coaching goes?
As a coach, as a young coach, I fell into the trap that I think a lot of coaches fall into, that they want their team to be able to do every facet of the game, and they want their players to be able to exhibit every fundamental and facet of the individual game.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you what coaches in our sport learn in basketball is, the more experience you gain, the less you feel like you've got to do that. And it's crazy. I never would have believed it, but there's something about wanting to know everything and have your players be able to execute everything. And boy, is that a swing and a miss.
Yeah.
And when I talk to young coaches, I just plead with them. I have what's called the top three, which I learned from the great mentors and coaches that I was lucky enough to be around. And it's taking our sport or any sport and saying, what are the top three things I want to be highly proficient at my team as a coach? And we're going to put everything we've got into being masters of those three things. So for instance, in basketball, for me, it was our half court defense, then our transition defense from offense to defense, and then we wanted to limit fouls. I think fouling is a terrible trait for a team. So those were my top three. So when I taught later in my career, taught my team and put my system together, it was based on those three things. Now we had to do everything else, right? There's a lot of other things you still have to do, and you're going to be maybe average at those things. But I'll tell you, if anything works, it's having a top three. Now that was really a sign of maturity for me, from wanting to be everything for everybody and teach them all, every aspect A through Z, to having three things I was going to be really good at. And it's crazy because you would think that a young coach could only handle three things and he would grow into knowing everything. It's the opposite.
Sure, absolutely.
It's crazy. That is the number one thing I've learned as a coach that I think had the most impact. Wow. Is creating the top three. Because if you think about, a coach is a brand. A coach, if they have a philosophy and a system and build a culture and have a way to play that game, that's their brand. I always ask young coaches, who are you as a coach? They can't answer it. Well, we like to play fast and press. No. I didn't ask you how you want your team to play. Who are you as a coach? It's a heck of a question. Love it.
The same applies to pretty much every area in business.
Yes.
That's why I keep on saying, for me, the two greatest schools of life have been traveling and sports, where I learned some of the greatest lessons. You mentioned, the more you master something, the less you feel you need to do it. That applies also to business, to relationship, to anything. Same thing. You mentioned asking young coaches, what are you as a coach? Now you ask, I can bet you ask any entrepreneur out there, what's your why, what's your business, who's ideal client? They will not be able to answer that, because most people, and that's not their fault, because most people they come from a good intention. They want to help everyone with all of their problems, but unfortunately only God can help everyone with all of the issues. Me and you, we're not God. So what we need to find is focus on one specific person with one very specific pain point and focus on that. Sure, that person will have other pain points, and those pain points can be additionals or upsells or whatnot, depending on your business model, but focus on one. As soon as you can do that, the better off you will be, because you don't want to be a generalist, you want to be a specialist. That's why brain surgeons are much more highly paid than, say, general practitioners, because for a reason, people want an expert. So absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing the lesson that we learn in sports can be applied. And that's why we've been talking at the start, sports are a beautiful metaphor for life, for business, for anything.
They sure are. And there's books written on the impact that sports have and the parallel sports have on lives. It's unbelievable. To me, the most powerful is winning and losing. Mm-hmm. And the value we put on them, but the lessons come from losing way more than the lessons come from winning.
Absolutely. Same thing in business. Yep.
Yes, no question. And I think, but maybe people out there would say, no, wait a minute, that didn't sound right. You'd think it'd be the other way around. If you continue to beat teams, all right, then that's the lesson. And what we just did to beat them, we'll continue to do. Yes, but what happens when it doesn't fall your way some night? And boy, there's where the strength of a coach and the wisdom of a coach really comes through. Because there's a lot of ways to take a loss. You can berate your team and just drive them into the ground. Or you can say, we're going to pull out all the parts of this game that we didn't execute well. We're going to revisit those. We're going to watch them on tape, and we're going to get better at all those areas. So the next time that won't happen. And we learn from why we weren't as successful as possible in that game. And boy, you talk about life. Holy smokes. And that's really what I work with men about and speak to men about, is the adversities and the obstacles in life. And when those things hit you, how do you respond? And it's like when you lose a tough game, how do you respond? It's the same language, it's the same lessons. Everything is exactly the same. And I love it. And I know, I mean, you and I, deeply share a love for both, and are 100% in agreement on that one.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned one thing that I want to dive deeper. You said there are two types of coaches, one that berate, one that inspire. What type were you?
I would say initially, if I were to go into the locker room, I think initially I would, because emotions are such a part of athletics, of sports at all ages, and nobody likes to lose. And so I would think, I know that there were times that I was pretty crazy right after the game, and probably loud and boisterous and challenged. I don't, if coaching becomes personal, it's not coaching, it's not teaching, it's not. And it really has no business. Always like to talk.
That's when you lose the dressing room. Absolutely.
Absolutely. But when you talk in terms of this team did not do this tonight, and I am so disappointed, because it's what we emphasize every day. It's one of our top threes, and there is no excuse that you guys can't block out and rebound. I am just totally okay. And that will last for a few minutes, and then I'll get down into what are we going to learn from this, because we don't want this to happen again, do we? So I would say a little bit of the mixture of the both, because boy, it's tough to walk off that floor and not be emotional sometimes.
Oh, you mentioned rebounds. That brought me a painful memory of me as a fan. You know what? I'm a Spurs fan. I will never forget
Yes.
that 2013 final, up by 6 points, 20 seconds to go, and Pop takes off his two best rebounders. And at the last stretch, and I will never understand. And that's, I'm sure, one of the things that will always haunt even Pop, one of the greatest coaches ever. How can you take off Duncan and Kawhi Leonard, your two biggest rebounders, in those clutch moments? I'm sure if one of them were on the floor, they would have got at least one rebounds and they would have won the title. That's something I will never understand.
Yes. Wow.
Did you ever wonder why? Try to understand what made a guy that experienced make such a basic rookie mistake in the clutchest moment of the season?
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't remember that series, so I can't remember exactly what the situation was.
Against the Heat, they were up by 6 points, 27 seconds left to go, and Pop, first of all, Kawhi misses 2 or 3 free throws, and then it was Game 6 in Miami. If they won that, they were the champions. And then he takes off Duncan, and then Kawhi goes small. And of course, the likes of LeBron and what's his name, Ray Allen, which is an absolute sniper.
Yes.
The first shot they missed, rebound. The Heat get 3 or 4 offensive rebounds in those 15 seconds, and that's what killed them.
Yeah.
Because they had all the big boys on the bench, and me, even though I'm not a basketball expert, I was crying at the screen. Put Timmy back. Put Timmy back. We need a tall guy to take these rebounds. I was like, how can you do that, Pop?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't answer that.
Has that ever happened to you, to make such a basic rookie mistake in key moment of a game that you had in the bag, and you just made whatever bad decision that ended up costing you the win?
Absolutely. I remember one in particular. Yeah. This still haunts me a little bit. It's just an adjustment I didn't make coming out of the timeout. they double teamed our best player who was going to get the last shot.
Yeah.
And we didn't go through that, like what would happen if they come and double team. And sure enough, they did. And we coughed the ball up and turned it over and lost. Remember that specifically. Yeah. Would love to have that one over.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure Pop does too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I learned and our team learned. I took all the blame because that was my error, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And our best player had the ball and he never had a chance to get a good look at the basket. They left one of our players who wasn't a great scorer and double teamed our best scorer. And I learned from that, believe me.
Yeah.
And I've actually spent quite a bit of time with the coach who defeated us that night, who
Wow.
was on the other bench, who I knew. And I would catch up with him later and say, I can't believe I didn't prepare for that. Knowing you, I should have, and so we talked it out and he kind of told me his strategy. And so I learned a lot from him. I wanted to know, because I thought I could be in that situation sometime where we were on defense and the other team had the ball and their best player had it in his hands. How would I defend that? So I tried to learn from it, maybe win a game down the road because of a blunder I made. So that's what you do.
Yeah.
I couldn't have been angry at the guys. They played their hearts
Absolutely.
out. Oh my gosh.
So how was the general relationship between coaches? Were they like very, stay away from me, just shake their hand, just be polite, and at the end you don't hang out, whatever? Was it like during the game we're competitors, but outside of the game we're friends? We can talk, we can do whatever.
I always thought that, first of all, almost everybody I ever competed against was really above board, classy guy, good guy. Then I would put them all into two categories. Those that I didn't know well enough to do anything other than, hey, coach, looks like your team's playing good. Good luck tonight. Let's have a great game. If it's somebody I knew, then the conversation is different, obviously, and you can share a lot more. But for the most part, I think coaches are very professional. I think we appreciate each other because we know how hard each other has worked, how much pressure there is behind winning and losing that game, and just all that goes into it. And there is a lot that goes into it. And I think we have a kind of a common camaraderie, and certainly you want to beat that team. There's no doubt about that. The competitive nature is there, but there's a general acceptance of each other, I think, which is pretty healthy.
Absolutely. So tell us about your best season as a coach.
My best season as a coach was the during my last stint as a college coach at Iowa State University in the year 2000. We took a team that in the Big 12 conference that was picked somewhere in the middle or even lower than that possibly. And we ended up winning our regular season conference, which hadn't been done since 1950. So that's exactly 50 years later. And went to our conference tournament. We won our conference tournament. So we probably, Payment at that time, we were probably ranked third in the country, I suppose, at that time. And then went into the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
With a really good team, with a great season behind us. And Iowa State University had never been in the Final Four and still hasn't to this day. So we had a chance to do something and maybe win a national title that had never been done. And we won in the NCAA tournament. We won the first game. We won the second game. So we got to the Sweet 16. We won that game. Had a week of practice and went into the Elite Eight game. And there's only 8 of us left in the country. And we drew Michigan State, who had a great team. They ended up winning the national championship.
Wow.
And we lost in a very, very close game.
Wow.
And I tell you, it's still an emotional thing for me.
Yeah.
It's when I was a young coach, I set I set 3 goals: be a Division I assistant, to be a Division I head coach, and coach in the Final Four. I made those goals at age 21.
Wow.
And here I am in my mid 40s, and I'm coaching in a game. And if we win, we go to the Final Four, and probably would be the favorite to win the national championship.
Wow.
So that's as close as that was my greatest season as a coach. We reached the furthest level. 2 of our players became NBA players.
Which ones?
Jamal Tinsley, who played 13 years in the NBA, and Marcus Fizer, who played for the Chicago Bulls, had a rather short career.
Okay. Wow.
But yeah, that was a tremendous experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. How did you bounce back from that? Did you leave basketball after that, or did you get back to the boys? Say, boys, let's do just like the last dance. Let's go for it one more time.
Well, very honestly, here's what this grown man did. I went to the locker room, and to look at the face on those to look at the players' faces was enough to bring me to tears. And everybody was so much on edge emotionally. Just, oh my gosh. And our head coach knew that there wasn't much to say. He had a really quick, like a 3-minute talk with the guys, and that was it. And I immediately left the locker room, and I was looking for a place to go by myself, because emotionally I was ready to lose it.
Sure.
And I was looking for the first open door, and I found one, and you know what was in there was a Zamboni.
Oh, wow.
Okay. A hockey Zamboni. That's all that was in that room. And I closed that room, and it was dark, and I cried my eyes out for about 15 minutes.
Wow. I thought you would go for the bathroom and just lock yourself in the bathroom for a few minutes, but that's a good alternative. Yeah. Wow.
Because I emotionally was just so, and
Absolutely.
it took me back to that 8-year-old kid. And it's an emotional story for me today as I speak to you about that kid that fell in love with that game.
Yeah.
And then professionally, so many years later, had a chance to do something that almost nobody ever gets a chance to do.
Yeah.
That's the pinnacle. March Madness,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and go to the Final Four. And we came so close and had it taken away. And
Wow.
I needed to cry like that 8-year-old.
Absolutely.
I did. I came full circle.
Yeah.
That was a tough one to respond from, but we went right back into recruiting, and got the guys back in class. And it was difficult, and people told you how great the game was, and how great your team was, and things, which was nice. But yeah, it was difficult, but you got to snap back.
Yeah.
Your players can't snap back if you don't snap back,
Absolutely. Get a
because
bounce
they'll look
back.
at
Yeah.
you, and boy, but what lessons out of that.
Sure. Did you have any shot at the NBA at any point in time?
Not tangibly, but I would have down the road had I been able to continue coaching. And I eliminated myself from my profession, as you know. And in the years from then, which was 2004 until now, I think I think I definitely could have, if that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, if you could put out, like, say, 4 or 5 seasons of taking the team to almost to the Final Four, I'm sure one of the NBA teams would have picked you up.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It gets down to a matter of who knows me well enough to even entertain speaking about coaching at that level.
Yeah.
And, because it's about who the people that do the hiring and making sure they know you. So it's that game that I would have had to play more than, most coaches, I think, are recognized as accomplished coaches and strategists and managers of people if they're at a certain level, I think, in our game. But yeah, I would have got down to, unfortunately, I knew people in the NBA at the time, and still know a lot of people in the NBA, but it wasn't in the cards for me, buddy, because that shortly after that was 2000, and 2003, my career came to an end.
What happened? What made you stop your career? Because you had a promising groups, you were on an uptrend trajectory with your team. You had a good bunch of guys. So what happened? What stopped your career?
Well, well, what happened was one of the things I speak with men about. So in the course of my coaching career, I know we don't have a timeline established here, but in 1992, we lost our 4-year-old daughter.
Sorry to hear that.
Um, and on that day, I changed.
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of me, there was a lot of dead inside me. Felt like a lot of things had been ripped from me. And I thought about the world, and I thought about my faith, and I thought of just about the human experience in a whole different way. And we were grieving tremendously, obviously.
Sure.
Um, and then took another job and took another job, and I continued to coach, and it lives with you forever. And
Sure.
unfortunately, I can tell you that 6 years later, we lost our second child,
Oh no.
who was almost 4 years old, to the same fast acting, really mysterious disease. And at that time, Payman, I was out of timeouts, buddy.
Sure.
I was at the end of my rope personally. As a man, as a Christian, I had no answers. I had way more questions than answers, and very frankly, I was done. I wanted to be done. I didn't want to be part of this earth anymore. And I knew, in having conversations with my pastor and and my mentors and my family and my parents, that there was so much to live for, and that my kids needed me. And we had 2 girls at the time still, and have 2 girls. They're adults, obviously now. That grief and that pain was never, I never fully grieved it. I never got healthy from understanding and working through what you need to work through with those types of things, the death of a child, the death of 2 children.
Wow.
And I began to do things that were not proper. There things that I shouldn't have been involved in, because I was seeking every avenue of comfort, something that took me from the pain, something that made me feel just okay again. And it's not, I don't say that as an excuse. I say that as reality. That's what was going on in my life. And I abused alcohol. That was one of the things that I leaned on to rid myself of pain. It's not the way to go, but it's what I did at the time, because it gave me gave me another world to jump into for a little bit and not feel the pain. And the reason that my career ended is that in 1997, I began to access pornography. When I talk to men, I say, without raising your hand, I just want you to feel inside and give me a yes inside if you access pornography, if pornography is part of your life. And I'll tell you, I can tell just by looking at eyes. And the statistics would tell you that it's about 8 out of 10 anyway. Well, I use that as a way to escape payment and comfort. And unfortunately, that lasted for 6.5 years, unbeknownst to anybody but myself and my maker. And because some activities were tipped off by someone in one of the chat rooms that I was in one night, the authorities became aware of what I was doing, and basically walked into my office one day in 2003 in January, in my office at Iowa State, and I knew it was over. I knew I knew my life was going to change forever in that moment. And I had the unbelievable feeling of fear course through my body simultaneously with the feeling of unbelievable, unbridled freedom.
Wow.
From the prison I had put myself in with living a life, a secret life. And when I talk to men, I don't know if I ever have a more direct impact on them than speaking the truth, because a lot of them can say, I'm doing or have done the same things. Can you really get in trouble for that? Is this true? Is this guy telling? Well, believe me. And so let's go back to the 8-year-old, because this thing goes full circle for me twice. So I had to relinquish my job at Iowa State. I had to quit. And it not only took me away from that job, it took me away from basketball forever. So the 8-year-old guy that was down there in the baseline starting to love that game could no longer coach the game that he loved more than anything but his family. That's the full circle part of it. So when I say that my career ended in 2003, that's exactly why it ended. I was incarcerated in a federal prison for 2 years in medium security federal. Something that we could fill many podcasts with.
Absolutely. Wow.
The story, though, is good. It is a good story, and I love telling the story. Although it was a horrible place, it's a world within a world that I wish on no one ever. It was a place where I did some of my greatest work, and it's for another time for you and me. But
absolutely, I would love to bring you back for another episode. We can just talk about the lesson and experience of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously after that, I'm done coaching. I return to my home with my family, and I recreate myself and try to figure out who in the heck this guy is.
Yeah.
Because I quite frankly didn't know. All I had known was I'm a coach and everything that went with it. And all of a sudden I'm not. And the loss of identity can be a cruel thing for people.
Yeah.
Some people can't deal with it. I mean, can be a debilitating experience. Most people get through it okay. I didn't. I really had a problem with it. I consider myself a coach forever.
Sure.
But I'd learned through treatment I received in prison, which is what I'll talk about, that there's a language of responsibility that I had to learn and use every day that didn't have to do with blaming people for anything, because everything was done by my choice. But to know that what I had done, and I thought something that was not going to get me in trouble, I lost my entire career. So when I recreated myself, I was involved in some basketball things, but I wondered for a long time, Payman, what am I here for?
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow.
Okay. Basketball is a game. It's a wonderful game, big part of my life. It's no longer an option. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing? Do I go dig a hole and hide in it because I'm so ashamed of what I've done and what it's caused and all the ramifications? Or do I stand tall and reclaim myself and not let what I do become who I am? And there was such a pull to do that, believe me. And I work on it every day right now. And we're talking 14 years later. I have to work on it every day to not be that guy and hate myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to love myself, but boy, it's a process. It is. But I'm working on it really hard. And I can't coach and be with other people and help other people unless I love myself. And I've been forgiven by so many people. And I've continued relationships with so many people that if they can find a way to love me, how can I not love myself?
Beautiful.
So it's, we all have challenges. They never go away. We never become perfect. We try to become whole, but we're never there because we're human.
Yeah.
And eventually, I knew that my mission and the thing that I was on this earth to do was to use my experiences and the stories and lessons that could come from them and help other men, hopefully before they have to go through the really painful part of not being authentic,
Wow.
and living in secret and living a lie. And when I came to that realization, I became a different person.
Sure.
Because now I had purpose, and now I was excited about all the pain. And because I asked many times, Payment, what's all the pain for? What does that represent? Well, certainly I can use that and bottle it and transform it into something good. That was kind of my idea. And fortunately, I'm here today talking to you on your podcast, and it represents all the work I've done to have that revelation about who I am and what I'm about and what I'm going to do in this world while I'm still here, to really getting specific about having a speaking platform and writing books like I did with my book Rebound Forward, and many more hopefully to go, and to be able to coach men and get to know people like yourself.
So
And
is your
I
sorry to
was,
interrupt. So is your book
yes,
about how you bounce back your life? Or
yes,
is it all about basketball? Okay.
no, no,
Wow.
no. Rebound Forward is a, yeah, it's a basketball title, but
Sure.
it's written because rebound is getting up
Mhm.
from being at your lowest,
Sure.
actually choosing to get up, and
Mhm.
forward is moving in the right direction.
Sure. So when you
So
had to recreate yourself and restart from zero, basically, did you have to change, to move to another city because of all the shame and judgment from people around you, or were you okay? This is where I am. This is what I'm gonna tough it out
yeah,
and redeem myself here.
yes, that was a family decision.
Okay.
And we said, we are not going to let other people impact what we do and where we live. And it was good for me because that stand
Mhm.
tall took on a new face. And that was an everyday face that I had to wear.
And also it reinforced the strength, the I mean the image that, hey, I'm not guilty. Sure, I made a mistake, but now I've grown from it, and I can accept it. I can, you know, I can move forward with it, because if I had moved, I would have also sent the message that, hey, I can't handle it. I'm weak, and I'm guilty. That sent the wrong message too.
And I'm the victim. You
Yeah,
start playing that victim thing.
exactly.
And
Wow,
I wasn't going to go there.
beautiful. Wow, Randy, my friend. I mean, we definitely need to do a part two to talk. I mean, we can do an entire season, entire podcast, just me and you. There's so much wisdom. But listen, let's uh, let's wrap this up now
Sure.
and do a part two, because it's I have a call in a few minutes,
Sure.
and it's been over an hour and a half that we've been. I mean, I'm not complaining. I love talking to you. I can be
It's
speaking,
amazing.
talking to you for. I can't wait till we can actually face to face over a glass of wine
Oh,
and good steak, and just
it's
talk
going to be
about
great. It's
basketball, about life, about
going to
everything,
be great.
for hours and hours.
Yes.
But for now,
Yes.
let's end this part one here, and then we're gonna. You have my Calendly. Please book a time for sometime, either probably better next week, and we'll do part two next week. And
Yeah.
then and definitely we might even, you're probably going to be the first person to do part three on my podcast, because I want to dedicate an entire podcast episode just on your experiences and lessons from when you were in jail, you
Yes.
know because
Yes.
that would be,
I
and
want to do that too.
that was one of my questions I want to ask you. Did you have a book about, you should write a book about what is it like to be in jail, you know
Mhm.
uh
I have 12 journals
wow,
that
turn
I've
them
that
into a
I've
book.
got from the experience. Yeah.
I'll talk to
Phenomenal.
you after the podcast, but about that. But listen, Randy, sorry, absolute phenomenal pleasure connecting with you. I'm so looking forward for part two next week. So with this, I'll salute you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll definitely talk in a bit. Take care, my friend.
Thanks so much, Payman, for your podcast, what it does for people, and your work with men individually and in groups, because you are doing the work that needs to be done.
It was all mine. That's what I love to do, is to bring arts and entrepreneurs to share their stories and share the beautiful gift of lesson they learned through the journey, ups and downs in this beautiful game we call life. Because what is life?
Yes,
Life is a game too.
it is.
It's a beautiful
It
game.
is.
So until then,
Yeah.
my friend, stay safe, stay
Thanks
awesome.
so
God
much.
bless. Take care.
Yeah, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye
See ya.
bye.